Hello, good evening, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to an all-new season of the one and only League Zero Inca Salsa Formula Series, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing, and powered by our title sponsor, Inca Salsa. This is the 12th season of the Open Wheel Championship, and as we continue to go from strength to strength, there's plenty to look forward to as we get a new championship campaign underway to wrap up what has been a fantastic year for 2024. In Season 11, it was a 9-round championship as contested by drivers using the Super Formula lights. For this season, we see the calendar reduced to accommodate the American holiday season, particularly the upcoming Thanksgiving at the end of November, and we've only got 6 rounds of racing awaiting us. However, each round has 2 races still, the sprint and the feature. The sprint seeing its length reduced slightly by a third, and therefore the sprint's going to be about who can put it on pole and break away to victory, whereas the feature is going to be even more tactical as it's ever been. Add to that as well the absence of the Super Formula lights, and our drivers are making their way back to the grown-up cart of the Japanese Super Formula Championship Academy calendar, and that will be, of course, the one and only what is the Super Formula SF23, also known as the Dallara machine, which we all know and love, and powered by either its Honda or alternatively Toyota engine. It is a machine like no other when it comes to putting the power down. As we're going to be seeing today and throughout the entirety of the championship campaign, 550 horsepower is at the fingertips of our drivers, or we should say the toe tips, and that's before they even opt to activate the push to pass overtake button, which will see the engines injected with even more fuel to enable potential overtakes at the most critical of moments. But as we welcome you all to this post-round broadcast, we should point out, what does a post-round broadcast exactly mean, as you'll be getting those for every single round of the championship this season. Well, a post-round broadcast means that all the racing action has already occurred. So this broadcast is live, but the racing action occurred early this week on what was Thursday the 7th of November 2024. We're bringing it to you as if it were live this weekend on Saturday the 9th of November for your viewing pleasure. And here in the commentary booth, we do not know what happens in the qualifying session or the practice session that's currently ongoing, or indeed in the races themselves, and therefore it's completely raw and new as in terms of experience to the commentary booth, and that's why we do encourage, of course, in our respective chats that you avoid any potential spoilers if you do know the results of the races or indeed qualifying, because we don't want to ruin it for the guys and girls tuning in at home. As we welcome you all to the first of the season's broadcast, well, we welcome you to all at round number 1 of the championship, and you can be tuning in live right now via one or two media platforms for your viewing pleasure. You could be tuning in via YouTube at youtube.com and search for TX141 at TX or Paul Walsh, and welcome to you guys and girls tuning in via YouTube. Alternatively, you could be tuning in via Twitch at twitch.tv/TX141, and welcome to you guys and girls tuning in via Twitch. But who is Paul Walsh? Who is TX141? I hear you ask. Well, allow me to introduce myself as your host and commentator for this season, all the way through from start to finish. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I'll be bringing you all of your racing action as if it were live today. And speaking of our schedule for today, times in Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT, or Universal Coordinate Time UTC, as we can see, in just under 12 minutes time, we'll be heading to our maiden qualifying session for the season, 15 minutes in duration, after which we'll be heading straight to the grid for the first of our races today, and that'll be at 5:30 for the 7-lap sprint race, after which we'll take a brief breather before building up at approximately will be 10 to 6 this evening for our 20-lap feature race. Indeed, what a calendar we've got in store, and the one and only circuit to Spa-Francorchamps plays host in Belgium, the 4.35-mile behemoth of motorsport. Indeed, a far cry from the long trips into the Ardennes forest of the past, consisting of the best part of almost 15 miles, but it is a circuit like no other when it draws spectators and fans year in, year out, where it be Formula 1 in the open wheel racing category, alternatively the 24 Hours of Spa in the GT3 category, you name it, it races here today, if not in the past. But speaking of our championship calendar then, as we head into today, let's take you through our championship calendar as it stands. And as we can see, we open up our bank account with the circuit of Spa-Francorchamps. And after this round, we're going to be making our way to neighbouring Italy on the European continent for the Autodromo Nazionale Monza. The Grand Prix circuit will await our drivers on the 14th of November at the Italian Temple of Speed, after which we make it our way back northwards to Austria for the Red Bull Rings Grand Prix circuit on the 21st of November, and that's where those pesky track limits could catch out many a driver there, along with its heavy braking zones. And then we'll have our mid-season break to accommodate Thanksgiving to wrap up November, before returning to the racing action for the second half of the championship campaign, and round number 4 when we make our way to United States States of America for the one and only time this season for the Long Beach Street Circuit. Indeed, IndyCar has raced there many a time in the past, and we're going to be seeing our Super Formulas absolutely ravage their way around the California streets on the 5th of December. Before in our penultimate round, we make our way to United Kingdom for the Silverstone Grand Prix Circuit on the 12th of December. Indeed, the home of British Motorsport will welcome our drivers, and then we'll be bringing things to a close for the ultimate finale, and we'll where better to host it than in Brazil at the Autodromo Jose Carlos Pache on the 19th of December, and a circuit that is no stranger to late championship drama, where it be in the current Formula One season, of course, or previously perhaps the 2007 Grand Prix may stick in the minds of many a driver. But as we all get set and ready to go racing today, in fact, I think it was the 2008 was season finale of Formula One. Now I think about it again, when it was 2007, 2008, one thing that's going from the past back to the present is we've got an absolutely brilliant championship calendar ahead, and when we kick off today at the circuit of Spa-Francorchamps, of which let's talk a little bit more about it. Located in the village of Francorchamps in what is the municipality of Stavelot in the Liège province of the Wallonia region of Belgium. Well, this circuit may be embedded in the many of the minds of a motorsport fan, and indeed most of its 19 corners are household names, where it be La Source at turn number 1, the Eau Rouge into Radion Complex at turns 2, 3 and 4, the uphill absolutely daunting high-speed run onto the Kemmel Straight, all 30 later on the lap, the Fancy Chicane, the medium speed double apex at turns 12 and 13, and the run out of the curve to Paul Ferrier or Stavelot 2 at turn 15, and on towards Blanchimont at turn 17, and that all-important heavy braking zone at the bus stop chicane to wrap up and lap and do it all over again at turns 18 and 19. There's something for everyone here, and that's what makes the Spa-Francorchamps circuit the ultimate equaliser when it comes to racing ability, because its first and latter sectors are all about heavy braking zones and high-speed performance. Meanwhile, in the middle sector, it's all about technical handling for medium to low-speed corners. And thank you very much to iRacing for the brilliant simulator on which our drivers will do battle, and of course these fantastic circuit maps which we'll be taking a look at each and every week. And of course the layout we'll be running will be the Grand Prix pit layout, the only difference being the fact that the pit lane excurses onto the circuit on the exit of La Source rather than coming out on the exit of Radion, which will be the full pit lane. But as our drivers get ready to go racing, we can't go racing without rules, of course, and let's give you a reminder of the rules for this season. Now, setup-wise, drivers are running a fixed setup as provided by the League Zero administration team, and fuel loads are restricted to 50%. Now, that's not going to have much of an effect in the sprint race necessarily, but it may mean in the feature race that fuel is going to be a consideration. Now, in general, for our races, they all begin via a standing start. Meanwhile, if a driver is a little bit impolite and a bit rude out on circuit, if they manage to accumulate 13 or more instant points through off-tracks, contacts and loss of control, they will receive a drive-through penalty in any given race. In terms of the sprint race specifically, the grid order shall be set based on the results of the preceding qualifying session, and the race shall conclude after either the allotted lap amount, 7 laps today, or 20 minutes, whichever expires first, but we expect the laps to be counted out before we do get to the 20-minute timer. The same for the feature race. Grid order, meanwhile, is set based on the results of the preceding sprint race, with the top 5 positions inverted. But what does that mean in simple English? It means we take the finishing positions of the sprint race and our top 5 are flipped. So whoever won the sprint race starts P5 of the feature race, and we do so until the 5th place finisher in the sprint race starts on pole. But if you finish 6th or lower in the sprint race, that's exactly where you start in the feature race. And the race will conclude after either the allotted lap amount, of which 20 laps, or 45 minutes. And we're expecting those 20 laps to go past before we get to that 45-minute counter. And there is a mandatory pit stop in the feature race in which drivers must change their tyres. However, this pit stop does not need to be done immediately. It must be taken on or after lap number 5, but not on the final lap of the race. So that provides an ample pit window anywhere between lap 5 and lap number 19. Well, that's enough rules, regulation, everything in between. We're ready for the racing, and I hope you guys and girls that tune in at home are as well. Well, as we do head back to circuit side, we are in fact going to get underway with qualifying a little bit earlier than planned here. Qualifying coming in about 5 minutes earlier than originally anticipated, but to be fair, we're all baying and absolutely panting for some brilliant racing action here on a fine Saturday afternoon, and we'll hook and blame us here as we see Jaden Callaway, one of the first drivers, in fact the first driver out the pit lane. And well, why is Jaden Callaway a very important celebrity on this grid? Well, you may notice he's running the number 1 on his car for Squid Gang Racing, and that is because after season 11 he is your reigning champion coming into this season, having taken the prizes and rewards at the top step of the Drivers' Championship, and indeed he was the leading driver for the winning team's champions team in season 11, that being Squid Gang Racing. So therefore Jaden Callaway is the man to beat after the previous season, but can anybody take the fight to his crown for season 12? That will be the big question that everyone will be asking. But elsewhere on the field, we've got many drivers here, 25 drivers in attendance today. And as we can see, Christian Gritzko here, the Canadian driver, the privateer, making his way on through. Some very colourful liveries on the cars as well, as all drivers make the way on around here on their initial warm-up laps before going on to qualifying. And we'll talk shortly a little bit more about the Super Formula SF23 car and some of the things that you may not be aware of when it comes to the Super Formula machine, and why it's perhaps a little bit different from the Formula 1 cars that perhaps many of you will be more typically knowledgeable about versus Super Formula, which is a series that's hosted in Japan but does see many a driver from an international stage take to its venerable tarmacs. But as our drivers make the way on around, we also welcome back to the grid James Turnbull here, the privateer in the number 83 in the very orange and blue machine, and well, definitely distinctive there if nothing else. But to be fair, we do love distinctive colours of cars, that's a certainty. But as he roars his way on down into the braking zone for Raj Corner. In terms of the season 11 top 3 drivers in the Drivers' Championship, well, Jaden Callaway was the overall winner. Meanwhile, in second place over the course of that season was none other than this man, Ray Aguilar, as we see the Avanti Autosport driver making his way there on down through Braun, the double left-hander of turns 10 and 11, and making his way in towards the Fangers chicane, and the Avanti Autosport car in its distinctive red liveries. Oh, goodness me, and that is a huge spin there, and I believe that was James Turnbull going on around a nightmare moment. He's had to be told immediately back to the pits there, and well, these cars are very sensitive to direction change, but you've got to drive them on the limit, of course, because that is where all the speed comes, and that's where the aerodynamics will work at their best. Indeed, you have to drive them as quickly as possible, because otherwise you won't get the air over the car that plants it down. It sounds like a contradiction that you've got to run on the edge to have the greatest stability, but trust me when we say with these open wheel races, there's nothing but quite running on the limit as Aguilar makes his way in towards the bus stop chicane and gets ready to go on to his first flying lap. And who else finished in the top 3 at the Drivers' Championship last season? Well, it's none other than one of the major organisers of the League Zero Open Wheel Formula Series, and that's Antonio Bianchi in the number 17 here for Avanti Autosport. And indeed, we'll be chasing after his teammate Aguilar, and the two will be hoping that they can potentially bring the team to the Teams Championship crown at the end of the season, and one of them can come away with the Drivers' Championship crown if they can't just make it a 1-2. But of course, then there'll be the big question, of course, of which of the two of them will be the champion out of the pair. But as he makes his way through here on his first flying lap, now serpentining his way out of Fangers and into Stablo 1 and Stablo 2, well, he makes his way on through here completely flat out all the way through and roaring his way down to the back straight. Now, you may notice here with regards to the drivers' cars, in particular behind the driver's head, albeit these distant camera shots not always that good at demonstrating it, but you will notice there is a grey-white band above the top of the driver's head. Now, that's recessed behind the driver, behind their seat, and you can see it close up there for Bianchi. Now, this in the race will every so often glow a lightish green, and that will be an indicator that a driver is using the push-to-pass tool, which is available to them, or the overtake button, of which they get 200 seconds of it in a given race. Now, what exactly does the push-to-pass tool do? Well, firstly, it's switched off in qualifying, and that way it makes it a completely level playing field in qualifying in terms it comes down to the driver and their ability in order to push the car to the absolute limit, and not where they deployed the overtake button on a given lap necessarily. But in the race, what the overtake button will do, or push to pass, is it injects additional fuel into the engine. Now, the engines these machines are running are 4-cylinder 2-litre Honda or Toyota engines. It depends on the manufacturer, but the key point being is these engines are regulated. There can be no differences between them, it's just who produces them, and the engines are running at just over 550 horsepower. When the push to pass button is activated, the additional fuel injection increases the engine output, and what this means is that drivers will accelerate from their current speed up towards the top speed of the car, normally rated in the region of somewhere of around 180 to 190 miles an hour, depending on the setup, the aerodynamics and the circuit and the wind conditions of the day, but it will enable the car to accelerate up to its top speed faster, and that is why it's known as an overtake button, in the fact that it aids the car to get to a higher speed compared to its roles to make an overtake. However, it doesn't change the overall top speed of the car, but what you will see is that drivers will try and use the overtake button to get to a higher speed to make those moves under braking, or at least in the drag race down towards the next corner. But the inverse is true as well. You can use the overtake button as a defensive tool to try and boost yourself away from your rival, particularly at the start of the race you've started on pole. And well, around here we do know, of course, the run from La Source all the way on towards Lake Com at turn number 6, so turns 1 through to turn 6 is going to be a big slipstream zone, and therefore you may wish to use the overtake button to try and brake the tyres. We can see there braking his way on around. That's why the drivers, I think that's Christian Gritzko getting it wrong. They're coming out to the Fangers chicane, and so easy to get it wrong in these Super Formula machines, no doubt about it. But meanwhile, as he crosses the timeline. Jaden Calloway for Squid Gang Racing. He has set the provisional pole time of a 53.649. And well, right now, Calloway continues to try and improve out there. Antonio Bianchi moves to P3 on a 54.509. And well, meanwhile, Elliot Cart making his way down, and somebody else getting it wrong there in the rear of the picture. And the blue passport motorsport driver from the United Kingdom will keep his head down right now. And I believe a real-life racer as well as a sim racer. Many of our drivers here have all different levels of experience, whether on the simulator or in real life. It's so great to see so many different calibers of experience as he makes his way on up the hill, roaring his way on through. Well, shortly we will get an onboard lap with one of our drivers to give you an idea of what it's like to take one of these SF23 machines produced by Dallara around the venerable circuit, the Spa-Francorchamps. As he powers his way on down, we also look behind there to Jace Mayer, the Rabbit Racing driver, a team that has been a staple of the grid for the last couple of seasons, and the number 77 driver from the United States of America, currently just outside the top 10, but he'll be looking for a little bit more of an improvement before all is said and done as we start to make our way towards the halfway point of this qualifying session. But as the drivers continue to push on around and down here, well, man, right now keeping it nice and tight as he does so, as we then do look to down in P16, and this is the privateer, albeit in similar colours to what you'd expect on the Ferrari Formula 1 machine. I do believe might be channeling himself as a little bit of a Ferrari fan in the number 29. It's none other than, well, yeah, you can see him on screen, David Ayezi there as he makes his way on through Lecom, and now coming in towards Ravage Corner shortly. As he goes into that downhill braking zone, he'll be looking to get the car as pointed as possible onto the anchors and try to go for that late apex. But as he comes on around, meanwhile, we do look to Adam Merchant, who is currently the fastest of everybody in sectors 1 and 2. It's the first half a lap. He's been absolutely unstoppable. What's he going to be like in the second half a lap? We'll have to wait and see. Could Squid Gang Racing's 41 potentially dethrone his teammate of Callaway from that provisional pole position? We'll have to wait and see as he comes down in towards the right hand here. And as he does, coming through Stablo 1 and Stablo 2, runs a little bit wide there. I do believe the lap will still be valid just about, but pushing it right on the ragged edge of adhesion there. And Merchant, I think, in fact, backing off slightly on the exit, just to give himself a bit of breathing room to the car in front of Shahi Zaher. Makes his way past my commentary box window and moves up to P5 on a 54.607. The Merchant coming down to the braking zone now, and what's it going to be this time around as he goes right into left here through the bus stop chicane. Well, in these open wheel machines you don't want to mount those curves because it completely unsettles the car, and given how low they run to the ground, it means that as a result hitting up those curves will absolutely confound the suspension, and Merchant does not improve there as he goes on to another lap. Meanwhile, further back here in P8, currently in the number 72 is Ray Aguilar, and the Avanti Autosport driver coming into the last couple of corners goes a little bit deep there. You can see the car just sliding away from him in this qualifying session, but heads to line, and what's it going to be? He comes across line. It's P3. It's a 54.058. It's a good lap there from the number 72 driver, and Aguilar now moving on to that second row of the grid. And well, can he go a little bit further? All is said and done. Well, it looks so right now. It's going to be a battle for second place in this qualifying session, given that between Aguilar and Court, it's only what is 600, and it's 3.5 tenths to Callaway, who seems to be in a world of his own. And well, the man hasn't stopped since season 11, it would seem. If anything, he's just keeping the momentum. Aguilar right now must be scratching his head inside the car, albeit I wouldn't recommend it at the best part of 180 miles an hour. He must be thinking, what do I have to do to take pole position? Well, we're going to see if he can find the magical remedy to do so, as meanwhile, we look to Antonio Bianchi here, the other member of Avanti Autosport, elsewhere on circuit, clear track around him, and right now coming towards the end of the second third of this qualifying session, as he comes down onto the brakes here, make his way right into the left, takes a very nice tight apex there, just about manages it, and he goes sideways there, coming out the corner. You can see the power slide coming on, goes P3 at a 54.046, and we jump aboard here with Bianchi for a flying lap of the Spa circuit. Nice and tight to the inside wall then at Lasor's first gear as he gets the power down. Now roaring his way up through the gearbox. You can see the quick changes on the steering wheel there with the paddle shifters, and powering his way in towards the original radio. Let's listen in. Completely committed there, albeit Bianchi backing off, so deciding not to attack on this lap, but cool the tyres down instead, so he won't ride on board for a full lap there for Bianchi. It sounded as though there was a bit of a lift off early on into the Rouge Radion complex, and deciding instead just to play it safe. But instead we jump on board then with your current visual pole sitter Jaden Callaway, and that's more like it, coming out of the complex 177 miles an hour and heading upwards here as he builds up to top speed in 6th gear at what will be 185 miles an hour. Onto the brakes here, we're coming down in towards what is Lecom, right into left, and then bring it over to the left hand side to open up the right hander at turn number 6, and as he runs a little bit wide down the hill now, he'll go in towards Ravage Corner. And braking there, coming all the way down to second gear, delaying those gear shifts to make sure the rear of the car stays set with the engine mounted behind the driver. And now into X corner at turn number 9 he goes, making sure not to run too wide. The runoff area being recently refurbished and replaced with a gravel trap. And as he comes in towards Poole, and it's just a lift of the throttle to get the nose to turn in 150 miles an hour and back on full throttle as he powers his way now in towards the Fangers chicane. Over to the left hand side here, opens up the right hand, and you can see there just absolutely pinpoint precision every step of the way. A little bit dirty in front, influencing the front end of the car, goes wide of apex at 13. That's going to cost him about half a tenth as he now comes through Stablo 1 into 2, but he'll be hoping the toe of the car in front of him will make up the delta as he powers his way now flat out all the way up towards Blanchimont corner, and as he does so now it's all going to be about commitment. Let's just listen here, it'll be flat out here through turn number 17. Absolute commitment there, reaching a speed of 188 miles an hour as he slams on the brakes down to second gear through the bus stop chicane and absolutely nestles it in perfectly. And for Callaway, could this be an even faster lap as Court has gone pole, and Callaway responds with a 53.355. Court I think would have think he'd done it, and then immediately Callaway comes back and says, no you haven't, because I found the toe and I found an even better lap out there. And Jaden Callaway absolutely flying, but Adam Merchant and Sonny sprung a surprise on everyone at 52.976, and well, if that lap is to stand, it does mean that Callaway will find himself being demoted to the second spot on the grid. It'll be a Squid Gang Racing lockout in that front row, but it won't be the way Callaway envisioned it. And Adam Merchant, well, being very sneaky right at the end there, and that is a lap by looks of things that's had very little to no toe on it, and well, in the end, it was in the middle section of lap, sectors 2 and 3, so the run essentially through Lacombe all the way to Stavlo 1, where Merchant has made up the time, and well, 4 tenths almost there is a huge gap now for Callaway to try and fight back, but Court being a further 3 tenths back. It looks like Squid Game Racing may have this qualifying session in the bag as Merchant comes on down in towards Ravazza, but as he makes his way on through, not Ravazza I should say, that's an Italian corner, we're thinking of Monza next week, instead going through Rivage corner, and as he makes his way out of X, what else can his rivals do? As meanwhile, we look to Leo Delmar, the Frenchman for Rodent Junior, the junior team last season of course beating Rodent Racing in what was a complete surprise. Normally the junior team expected to be the team that gradually promotes drivers to the senior team, but quite the reverse in season 11, where it was the junior team had the better run of fortune and also results. And as Delmar makes his way on through turn number 6 in towards 7, going down towards Virage, currently at the bottom end of the top 10 in P9 on an out lap, where everyone's out there minus Cord and Dance at this time. Cameron Dance also into the pit lane. We've also got Xavier Zainav in the pit lane, and I do believe Ryan Tibu in the pits as well, and not putting a lap together, so we may be seeing Tibu started for the back of the grid if they can get that car out for the race, and well, might be having some technical issues in the first round of the day, and that's one thing you don't want to see coming your way. But Delmar here getting himself set up as Callaway responds and sets a 52.951. That's 2.5 hundredths faster than Merchant's time. Merchant's in the pit lane, Court's in the pit lane, so Callaway may feel as though he's got the upper hand on his teammate now. And the reason why we say if these laps stand is because given the fact this broadcast is relying on an iRacing replay file, unfortunately, if laps are invalidated due to track limits, we can't see that until we go to the grid for the race, i.e. the sprint race. We'll keep you posted on that where we can. So therefore, all the times you see on the left-hand side of your screen are provisional, subject to track limit checks after qualifying has completed. But Delmar here is going to throw everything at this one. He's going to be the last driver to go into a flying lap, and what a better way to see out the qualifying session than to ride on board with a man who's currently P9 and is going to gamble it all on one final lap. So he makes his way across the timeline, then down towards turn 1, braking at what will be 70 metres of corner apex, down to second gear, managing a higher gear to manage the wheel spin, but in return, of course, perhaps not getting as much run out the corner that we've seen other drivers. It's a bit of a different trade-off, but Delmar will be hoping that the more considerate approach will help the car out. But qualifying is complete, ladies and gentlemen, because of course, how could we forget the fact that qualifying concludes exactly on the 15-minute timer, and will therefore, we won't be seeing the rest of that lap for Delmar, and that is the qualifying session. So Jaden Callaway will take pole position, and will for round 1, the sprint race, the first race of the season. This is how our drivers will line up on the grid. It'll be Jaden Callaway who takes the overall pole position for the first race of the season for Squid Gang Racing, joined on the front row by his teammate. It's a Squid Gang lockout of Adam Merchant. On row number 2, Ray Aguilar for Avanti Autosport and Elliot Court for Blue Passport Motorsport. Then on row number 3, it'll be the New Zealander of Cameron Dance, the privateer, the highest placed privateer on this this grid, ahead of Antonio Bianchi for Avanti Autosport, who in the end could only settle for 6th. Philippe Sarkis starts P7 for Kraken Racing, ahead of Shahi Zuhair for Kraken Racing. Keep your eyes out for the Canadian. He's normally stronger in the races compared to sometimes in qualifying, it would seem these days. With Leo Delmar P9 for Rodent Jr. ahead of Richard Lai for Rodent Racing, who completes your top 10. A close top 10 there, no doubt about it, and the theme continues as we make our way to Best the Rest P11. Gail rolls there for Rodent Racing, the Briton starting in that 11th place spot, and is joined on the 6th row of the grid by Christian Gritzko, the privateer who had an early spin in qualifying but has turned it around and put himself just inside the top half of the field. On row number 7, it's David Ayezi, the privateer, with Michael Fairchild for company, P14 alongside, and then we will see behind them Gareth McAllister starting P15 behind the Cambodian, but in return, the Rabbit Racing driver from Australia will have the company of James Turnbull on the 8th row of the grid at the privateer P16. It's then the number 24 of Nick Peterson in 17th place, ahead of Alex Penn, who's 18th on this grid. And then we do see complete in the top 20 Jace Mayer for Rabbit Racing and BMR's Eric Gilroy. We can then see Xavier Zenev starting at P21 for Rodent Jr. And the Frenchman is joined on the 11th row of the grid by Chase Small, the privateer, P22. And then it will be Arturo Mayorga starting P23 for BMR. And Jeremy Barber completes the final full row of the grid, P24 there for the American. And last but not least, not getting a valid lap timing in qualifying, the Canadian driver of Ryan Thibault, who will be hoping will be able to make it to the grid, but if not, we could be seeing a 24-car grid. In fact, I can see him there. Thibault is on the grid. He's starting from the very back, so therefore he's going to have to do it the hard way by making his way through. And well, you never know, could he be trying to go for a last to a top 10 change or a last to first change? Indeed, sometimes you just got to get your nerves settled down and start from the back of the grid and make progress little by little. That is going to be your grid for race number 1, ladies and gentlemen. And as we do wait for our final couple of drivers to get themselves into position, it is a 4-minute gridding procedure here. It gives our drivers plenty of time to make sure they're all settled down. If they need to take any bathroom or comfort breaks, they can do so. But what a grid. And at the very front, of course, Jaden Callaway, the man who starts on pole and starts off from where he left off in season 11, and he will be feeling as though this could be the story of the season to begin, whereby he can just run away with things up front, albeit his teammate Adam Merchant won't be willing to let him run away. And last year's runner-up, or last season's runner-up I should say, Ray Aguilar, will be also very keen to make a first impression by the time they get to Lake On. But that's the thing with Spa-Francorchamps, you may put it on pole, but you've then got to break away at the front of the field, and it's until you get through Lake On that the break is possible. And as we sit down on board here with number 72 car Aguilar, well, he'll be looking at the rear of Callaway's car, and he'll be looking to his left at Merchant and thinking, I want both of you in the run down the Kemmel Straight. But it's one thing to say it in theory, it's another thing in practice. And further down the order, of course, we do have some drivers a little bit out of position. Alex Payne, I think he was hoping for a bit more in qualifying, the number 30 driver. He starts P18. Can he make his way past the likes of Peterson and Turnbull early on, or will he find himself caught up in the mid-pack madness, as there always is, and particularly when it's the first race of the season, everyone will be absolutely itching and champing at the bit to try and make progress early on. But with most of the grid in place now, and we look to Jeremy Barber just towards the back there, the privateer all set and ready to go as well. Well, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, this gridded procedure is almost there. Leon Delmar, the last driver to take his spot on the grid. I think we've got 1 more minute of gridding to go, and when we are good to go, it will be the battle of Callaway and Merchant off that front row, and Aguilar and Court behind looking to go racing. But Delmar is starting from the pit lane. The grid is set, the engines are roaring, and well, for the first time this season, ladies and gentlemen, Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, it's lights out and away we go for race 1 of round 1 of the championship. And Jaden Callaway gets a brilliant start, but look there from Aguilar, immediately up the inside of Merchant, trying to make the move happen into the source as all the drivers make the way on through. Oh, goodness me, it's drama right at the start there, and that is Turnbull, who's been turned around. Major contact, it would seem, but most of the drivers taking evasive action as we look back towards the front of the field, and Aguilar is under pressure here as they make the way over the crest and now onto the Kemmel Straight. And well, Merchant in the end being able to stand with authority as the two leaders using the push to pass to try and break away as soon as possible. You can see Aguilar there under pressure from Court and Dance as they're both looking to make moves, and that's going to be Caught up the inside. Goes a little bit deep there, the understeer catches him out, but in the end just about gets it stopped, and Aguilar falls to P4 as Merchant and Callaway swap places there, going out through Lecom and down in towards Rivage. Further back, Michael Fairchild's had a brilliant start to this race, and as he makes his way down into the braking zone, oh, a bit of a tap there to the rear of what is Gal Rolls' car, albeit I think both of them getting away from it, but keep in mind, of course, these cars are quite sensitive to contacts, and particularly those front wings. You don't don't want to hit the rear tyre of another car, because otherwise it's going to shear off pieces of aerodynamic bodywork, and that's going to cost you a lot of speed from the outset, and you need every little bit of aero, not just for the corners, but also the straights as well. You don't want that aero misshapen, because that can cost you 2-3 miles an hour on the straight, and those 2-3 miles an hour are going to be absolutely invaluable. As meanwhile, Alex Penn, when he hasn't gained, he hasn't lost at the start, he'll be grateful for that, but he'll be wondering what could have been if he hadn't had to take evasive action from that opening corner instant. But as the drivers weave and wind their way towards the end of this first lap of racing, well, meanwhile, we look back towards the top 10, and that is a run wide for Antonio Bianchi, who's fallen all the way down to P9 for his P6 starting position, and Kraken Racing Shahi Zuhair making great progress, but here comes Bianchi, looking up the inside, 2 wide they go in towards Blanchimont, and well, brilliant brave racing from these two, but in the end, Bianchi will get ahead, as meanwhile, here comes Gritsko. Gritsko looking around the outside, goes away on the brakes, and Zuhair being ambushed left, right, and centre as the car goes straight on there, and I believe that is Antonio Bianchi taking to the escape road, just overcooking it under braking, too much speed, and couldn't get it stopped. But after one lap of racing, it is Adam Merchant who leads by 4/10 over Jordan Callaway. Elliot Court is P3. Ray Aguilar is a further 1.5 seconds back, P4, ahead of what is Cameron Dance. Then we have Philippe Sarkis in P6, ahead of Richard Lyon, and then Christian Gritsko, P8, Shahi's ahead, P9, Antonio Bianchi, P10, and Gail Rolls is P11, best of the rest. But looking back to the front of the field, here we go once again. There, it's the battle of Squid Gang Racing's Callaway and Merchant. Callaway on the outside, Merchant defends the inside. You can see they're caught, very eager to make progress. Can't make it though, with the two teammates working together to create a rolling roadblock. Cameron Dance moves up to P4, gets ahead of Aguilar there in the run down towards Lake On. But I get the feeling this is the mutual of you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, but nobody's going to be scratching the back of Jaden Callaway, who's gone around there at turn number 6. And well, in the end, I think just taking a bit too much speed and running wide as he had the steering angle in there coming out of the right-hander. And as a result, the rear left tyre has not had the grip available to it. He gets it turned around with a little bit of a graze against the tyre barrier on the inside. But Jaden Callaway, with a nasty spin, gets it back together. But meanwhile, in all of this, well, now it's Zuhair versus Gail Rolls, as that is going to be Rolls looking around the outside, can't quite find it as we look back from the rear of the Kraken Racing machine, and Zuhair making a little bit of a rolling train of cars here. And well, I get the feeling that Bianchi's got back ahead of Zuhair. Zuhair's had a bit of a moment in turn, and now he's got the queue of Rolls, Fairchild, McAllister, Mayer, and Zainab all behind him, with Tibu also starting from the back of the field in P25, we should point out, up to P15. And you've got a 7-car train right now fighting over P9, and it's not looking to be going anywhere but closer together as they make the way now onwards towards what will be the bus stop chicane once again, and we bring this second lap to a close. But as they do, here comes Rolls, and you see that the overtake button being deployed. Oh my goodness, and that is Fairchild absolutely storming and stomping his way around the outside to inside here. We've had to use all the track to do it and then some, but it's going to be Michael Fairchild who makes a move there, and well, the privateer, I think, just being caught out a little bit by the fact there was just no speed by comparison with his rivals. That's a car around meanwhile, and that is Rolls who's gone spinning around the exit of the bus stop chicane. And well, we've seen a couple of spins so far, and that's another one to add to the bank account as he reverses off of the racing line. And well, in the end, the car's will be towed to the pits, and I suspect there's some damage as well from where he's had the spin, or at least the tyres are not cooperating. With Adam Merchant not having his teammate to support him. Now here comes Elliot Court looking for the lead of this race. Court goes around the outside, Merchant tucks back in, both of them using their overtake buttons there to try and build up the speed. Of course, cognizant of the fact they want to fight each other, but they don't want the battle for P3 to get ever closer, because otherwise it will be a 4-way fight for victory come the end of this race. As here's Dance, followed by Aguilar as they make the way down towards the Raj corner. Behind them it's Lyon and Sarkis as they make the way onwards towards the right-hander. You can see how the fact that whilst we do have the field starting to spread out, we've got some brilliant battles forming as well. So there's plenty to keep an eye out here with Christian Gritsko. Started P12 in this race, in P8 as it currently stands, and hoping he can make a little bit more progress before all is said and done today in the privateer machine. And well, what a turnaround of fortune so far in the fact it all went a bit wrong in qualifying, but it's now definitely going in the right direction in the race as he heads in towards the factory chicane. From right into left here, and as they do now, it's going to be more about getting into the zone. As oh my goodness, and that is Gareth McAllister, and I believe Arturo Mayorga, I should say, coming together, and that is into Pouhon corner, or the exit of the gravel there, the first part of Pouhon, and well, both drivers get into the Barrett. That is a nightmare moment. We couldn't quite see what set it off, and we won't be able to get a replay of that due to technical limitations. But what we can tell you is that both drivers have had to take the cars to the pit lane. Well, given the fact they've got wheels missing, There's no surprise there, and their race will be at its end. But here is Chase Small in the battle for P15 with Delmar behind, and as they make the way on towards Blancheville corner, Delmar the inside, the Frenchman attacking the American as they make the way on down, and well, it's going to be Small now who looks to try and counter-attack there, thinks about it under braking, but then not quite close enough to force the issue, and a bit of a lock-up there on the front right brake for Small. That's not going to help out in the long term. You don't want to overheat the brakes, and these machines are indeed put excess temperature in the tyres, because you need these tyres to be at their optimum. As soon as they go out of their ideal temperature range, suddenly this car can feel very prickly to drive indeed. But as they come out of La Source, meanwhile, we look back to the front of the field, onto lap 4 of racing we go, and we'll court still ahead of Merchant, despite Merchant gets very close there on the run on through at Lake Om, and coming down toward the Raj corner, we look back over the rear of the number 23. And as you can see up there, well, Merchant taking a bit of a tighter run as a major bit of dust there being kicked up with the right-hand side tyres of Court's car. And was that a bit of a lock-up there, or was it just some debris and dust off the circuit surface? Or if he heads towards what will be the double left-hander of Puron corner, Court breaking away initially, but Merchant will look to come back as soon as he possibly can. Half a second between the two of them. Court does seem to be gaining, but to be fair, given the dirty air that Court will be pushing the way of Merchant, it's understandable that Merchant would lose out for the more technical middle sector, but it's going to be in the second, well, in fact in the last sector we should say, and also the first sector, where it's more about the straight lines and the high speed performance. That's where we'll see Merchant catch up if he's got the ability to stay close in the middle. But you can see the gap opened up to 7/10, is now closing once again as the toe becomes a pressing factor as they're coming towards Blanchemont corner. No change at the moment, and well, Merchant, we get it closer and closer. He halves the gap to 3.5 tenths, but it's not enough here as they head onto the brakes, retard the cars, and then go accelerating once again to go on to lap number 5. But meanwhile, looking back, it's too wide here at the bus stop chicane, and that is Richard Lyde just on the inside there of Philippe Sakis, and Sakis goes around there, too much steering angle, trying to get the power down, and Richard Lyde's confidence well placed as he moves up into P5. Brilliant side-by-side racing, but only one of them could come out on top, and in the end, Lyde is able to do so, and started P10. He's now up to P5 and looking to try and break away from Antonio Bianchi, but I think Bianchi's got other ideas as we ride on board the nose here of the number 17 driver as he roars his way up through Blanchemont. And as he does so, Rouge and turn as well, and Bianchi getting a huge overspeed here as he tries to look for the move. Can't quite find it as that wide angle lens gives you an idea of the speeds they're picking up and how he pulls out the toe. But in pulling out the toe, they're losing a bit of speed. In fact, he's only going defensive. Gritzko looking for the move around the outside. So Bianchi having to play the game of a good defense and a strong offense. But in turn, that offense not being good enough to pull him away from Gritzko, who's looking to try and make a move here down towards the Raj corner. Bianchi leaves the door open, goes very deep. And as he does so, Gritzko works it out and moves up into P6. A brilliant bit of manoeuvring there from Christian Gritzko. And well, the Canadian driver taking P6 and catching Bianchi out by simply forcing Bianchi into a situation we had to leave the door open. And as they make the way down through Puron corner, Gritzko immediately now breaking away. Almost 2 seconds between himself and Bianchi, and within a second now of light, and we're hoping for more. As meanwhile, we're hearing that there's been a bit of an incident for Adam Merchant. In fact, he's fallen to P3, so he's had an error somewhere out on circuit and has lost out in the battle with Elliott Court, and therefore now it's going to be Cameron Dance who's just in front of him, P2, and well, Dance is going to try and hold on here with Merchant and Aguilar right in the mix with him, so it's going to be a three-way fight for the second spot on the podium. But what will happen elsewhere is the question as we see 3 wide here. Oh my goodness! And well, Antonio Bianchi have all taken the words out of my mouth, which is you don't go 3 wide into Blanchemont at the best of times and backs out of it. But Philippe Sakis makes the move around the outside, almost count, and well, moves up into P8. But Michael Fairchild right now absolutely digging in with a dogged defense here as they charge their way onto the penultimate lap. But Fairchild having to go even more defensive. Both drivers using the push to pass button here to keep themselves alive in this battle. Side by side they're going to La Source, but around the outside goes Sakis, and the Brazilian driver, well, he gets head for now. But the thing is this a bit of a game, or a bit of a tactical game we should say, for Fairchild, because he'll know, of course, now he will have the toe up the hill. But you'll notice there that Sakis cutting across the front of Fairchild. He's legally allowed to do so, but why would you do that so early is the question. Well, by making the two cars so close together, it means that Fairchild doesn't get as big a toe now onto the camel straight. So Sakis being very smart here with his positioning. Fairchild will look down the outside, but look, they both reach top speed with the overtake button. Fairchild won't be able to make the move there. That's brilliant tactical defence from Sarkis. Philippe Sarkis showing that whilst you may have the ability to use the push to pass button, if you know where to put the car when the toe's also a factor, you can make it very difficult for your rival to gain on you, even on the longest stretch of tarmac or the longest straight on the circuit. But as they come in towards X and now down towards Poole and they go, will meanwhile we look a bit further back to Nick Peterson, something we haven't really talked about today, and the number 24 driver right now in P16, having started 17th, so he's gained 1 place. And in front of him is Chase Small, who started P22, so gained 7 by comparison. And we'll both drivers here right now trying to fight over the final spot of the top 15. And well, as they head in towards Poole Corner, they'll just see up the road from Delmar, who's 2.5 seconds up the road from Peterson in particular, 2 seconds from Small, and they'll both be hoping they can close him down before this race is over. And Delmar, who's had a very difficult race so far, will be hoping that's not the case. He's just able to stay away. As the drivers run nose to tail on through at the Fangers chicane, right into left they'll go. Well, Peterson right now staying close, but I don't think able to find a way in at this time. But meanwhile, Michael Fairchild and Philippe Sarkis battling here, and Fairchild does get ahead of the Brazilian driver in the run through Blanchimont, but we will have 1 more lap to go as the white flag is waving. There it is, and as we can see, therefore it does mean we are into the final lap as Fairchild makes his way in towards La Source. Will there be a potential move here? No, there's not. Meanwhile, we do see exchanges and blows being made in the battle for P2. Well, race leader 3.5 seconds up the road. It's Dance versus Merchant Aguilar, and well, New Zealand right now trying to break away a little bit longer. As we can see there, Merchant's going to look around the outside. Aguilar with a double toe. He's tucked in firmly behind Dance. Can he get ahead of what will be Merchant as they almost go 3 wide down to braking into Lake Com? And Aguilar the inside. It's going to be very close, very tasty indeed. Merchant forces the issue outside to inside, back to outside. Great racing room and respect shown between the two. The Squid Gang racing driver still got the Avanti Motorsport driver up his inside, and as they come through the right-hander, well, there might be smoke kicking up there from Dance's tyres. But I'm telling you right now, that's some absolutely smoking hot racing from Aguilar and Merchant, and Ray Aguilar take a bow, sir. That has got to be a contender already for move of the season. The Avanti Autosport driver makes it happen, and Merchant showed him just the right amount of racing room. Great respect between the two rivals, and well, that is absolutely brilliant superform in the racing as Aguilar moves his way up into P3. And I think Merchant right now will be thinking, you know, I want to come back at him, but also I've got to give him credit because he's just put on an incredible pass. Albeit at the heat at the moment, he'll be thinking more about the former rather than the latter as they come on through Stablo 1 and Stablo 2. There's only 1 long stretch of the braking zone to go now as they head up towards Blanchimont Corner. And meanwhile, further back, Xavier Zainab right now, the Rodent Junior driver, trying to look for 1 more place on Antonio Bianchi in the fight for the final top 10 spot. But we have to look back to the front of the field, ladies and gentlemen, because Elliot Court for Blue Passport Motorsport, he may not have started today on pole, but one thing's certain, he's going to finish this first race today as your winner. He takes victory by 3.5 seconds of Blue Passport Motorsport as Elliot Court ahead of Cameron Dance, who holds on to P2. Ray Aguilar finishes P3, round off the podium ahead of Adam Merchant P4, and it'll be Richard Light who rounds off the top 5 ahead of Christian Gritzko, with Michael Fairchild just holding Philippe Sarkis at bay in the fight for P7. And it'll be Ryan Tibu starting P25, finishes P9, a fantastic drive, and it'll be Xavier Zainab P10 there for Rodent Jr. ahead of Alex Penn, Bester P11, Jace Mayer, Antonio Bianchi, Leo Demar, and then it'll be Chase Small who will be wrapping up your top 15 just at the close ahead of Nick Peterson. And we still have 2 finishes to come on circuit, including what will be Jeremy Barber, and well, Barber's still got a way to go, it would seem, as he's currently in P17. Here he is, and it's been a challenging race for not just Jeremy Barber, but also for Eric Guillory, and well, Guillory being the best part of what I do believe is 25 seconds behind at this time. Well, we'll continue to see them make the way towards the close of the race, but what a race it has been as Barber makes way through the last 2 corners. To be fair though, started P24 and finishing P17, he's made up some places and brought it home. That's the important thing to do here as he crosses the line, and well, as he does so, I do wonder there, is that a little bit of a livery in dedication to the Peepo meme? It may be, if any of you are internet viral with regards to what is the green-faced character, but indeed he'll be feeling more than green-faced. He'll be feeling quite red-faced and flushed at the fact he's brought home P17 ahead of Eric Guillory, the BMR driver, who will wrap up our finishing order on the lead lap, P18 for BMR. And goodness me, ladies and gentlemen, what a race. And he finishes a lap down, it should be pointed out. He is the sole driver to finish a lap down. But that is the completion of our sprint race here at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. But given we've got a little bit of a warm-up period before we do go racing once again, let's take you through those race results subject to any stewards' inquiries. And here they are for our first sprint race of the season. Elliot Courts then taking victory for Blue Passport Motorsport by 3.5 seconds over Cameron Dance. The privateer in the end couldn't quite stay with the leader, but what he could do is lead the battle for P2 all the way home, ahead of Avanti Autosport's Ray Aguilar, who fought hard and fast back from a difficult start to the race to make sure he finished on the podium and finished where he started in P3. Adam Merchant in the end, P4 for Squid Gang's racing driver. It wasn't quite the race that the team wanted, and neither was it for Merchant in particular, but he still managed to hold off Richard Lyther, who took P5, the Rodent racing driver, by 7/10 over Christian Gritzko. We then saw P7 to Michael Fairchild, the privateer, just ahead of Kraken Racing's Philippe Sarkis, and the Brazilian driver being followed up by what was there the Canadian over Ryan Thibault, with the privateer then followed by Xavier Zainav, the Frenchman for Rodent Jr., completing the top 10. Alex Penn was P11 best of the rest, the privateer, ahead of Jace Mayer for Rabbit Racing, whose P12 was then followed up by Antonio Bianchi, who fell down the order over the last couple of laps. Unfortunate for the Avanti Autosport driver, but I wouldn't be surprised if some excess tyre temperature and wear was holding back. But the Italian still holding off by 7 seconds. Leo Del Mar, the Rodent Junior driver who had a difficult race, he'll be looking for plenty more in race number 2 of the day, ahead of Chase Small, who completed your top 15. It was a continued run of the privateers from Small to Nick Peterson at P16, and then Jeremy Barber P17. Then we saw Eric Guillory P18 for BMR, and indeed the only driver to finish a lap down, with our top 17 all being on the lead lap. And there we can see the retirements for our drivers of Shahi Zaher, who was 3 laps down for Kraken Racing, Gareth McAllister 4 laps down for Rabbit Racing, the same for BMR's Arturo Mayorga. And then we also saw Jaden Calloway retire with what was 4 laps down. 5 laps down to Gail Rolls, the Rodent Racing driver, and then David Ayezi and James Turnbull, both involved in that open lap incident, and in the end not completing more than 1 lap. So 25 starters, and in the end 18 finishers, of which 17 on the lead lap. But what a race, ladies and gentlemen, and we've still got one more race to come here today at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps in the opening round, round 1 of 6 in Season 12 of the League Zero Inca Salsa Formula Series for 2024. And, well, coming up soon will be the 20-lap feature race, and, well, what a race we've got in store there. 3 times the distance effective, minus 1 lap to do the mathematics precisely, on a cloudy Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps here in Belgium. And, well, it means all the drivers will be getting their heads down and absolutely looking to go for gold. And remember, it is a top 5 reverse grid for the purposes of what will be our second race today, based on the finishing positions of our first race. And when we do come to the grid and procedure, we won't be able to give you a visual walkthrough of how that grid lines up due to some technical limitations, but we will talk you through that grid. Indeed, it is going to be a grid that's a sight to be seen with regards to exactly how all of our drivers line up and how they all potentially finish the race. And, well, it gives us just enough time to take a quick breather. And if you haven't done so, this is the perfect time to grab a liquid refreshment or take a breather of your own, because in 2 minutes' time, we will be going racing once again. As James Turnbull gives us a quick demonstration now of just how easy it is to lock up the front brakes under braking into the bus stop chicane, and number 83 driver there. We had a very difficult race, number 1, involved in the early incident that really put a spanner in the plans that he had. We'll be hoping race number 2 is a little bit less dramatic, potentially, and that it's all going to be about getting his head down, and as he makes his way onwards towards what will be the Rouge and Radion complex, he'll be thinking about the past as the past, and you've got to get your head down and go for the future. Now, as we sit here and do wait to go racing, a quick thought, of course. Some of you may be thinking, well, how exactly do these Super Formula machines differ from Formula 1 cars? Because in open wheel racing, the pinnacle of international open wheel racing is seen to be Formula 1. Meanwhile, Super Formula is the pinnacle of the Japanese open wheel racing series. Well, the key difference between the cars, firstly, power output. Formula 1 cars, if my memory serves me correctly, and I'm going to try and do this without looking to my notes, do have the best part of in the region of 600 to 650 horsepower, whereas our Super Formula cars have 500 horsepower, well, 550 horsepower before we consider the injection of fuel for the overtake button. On top of that, there is also the push-to-pass button, which Super Formulas have. Meanwhile, Formula 1 cars have the drag reduction system, or DRS, whereby If the cars are in a certain distance from their rival in front, then they will be able to open up a wing flap on an extended straight, a designated straight zone, where they'll be able to gain a bit more speed and potentially make a move, so long as they've earned the right to make that move by being within 1 second of their rival. Not so here. Push to pass can be activated by the driver at any point. There are also some energy recovering systems in the Formula 1 cars that do not exist in what is the Super Formula SF23 Dallara machines. So that's the quick summary of the differences there. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we head to the grid for our second and final race of the day here at the circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. And well, as our drivers all get themselves into position, we will not quite, I do believe, be able to present you the grid on screen, but we can walk you through that grid as all of our drivers start to take their positions. And we'll have finished P5 in what was race number 1 of the day. He starts on pole then for our second race of the day. It'll be Richard Lye for Rodent Racing. He'll be joined on the front row by Adam Merchant, whose 4th place finish is rewarding him with another start in P2. And it'll be Ray Aguilar and Cameron Dance on row number 2, with Elliot Court, your winner from race number 1, line up on what will be P5 for our second race of the day. It will be at P4 there, so I get the feeling there might be a driver starting a bit out of position. Cameron Dance will start P5 instead, so in fact it looks like Dance was promoted to the win after race, but the grid is set in fact, so we're not going to be able to give you any more of a run than that, ladies and gentlemen. But as all the grid get into position, well, they're all set and ready to go, and without further ado, it is lights out and away we go for our second race of the day, as Richard Lye gets us underway then as they roar their way down into the braking zone, and will immediately Adam Merchant looking for the move around the outside, but as they roar their way onwards towards what will be the Rouge Radio Complex, there you can see Merchant with a very hairy moan around the outside, and still too wide as they go up the hill. Lye and Merchant are not giving either one the space other than the bare minimum that's required of them, and as they power their way onto the Camel Straight, Richard Lye has made this defence work absolutely fantastic, and he's forced Court, Aguilar, Merchant and Gritzko all to fight each other. But hold up, Court's coming back at Lye as they head into the braking zone here. Contact between the two of them, and it forces Court onwards onto the runoff area, and he'll rejoin, but he'll have to give the place back. As they make the way out of Lake Calm, it's now going to be Aguilar looking for the move and return here, as Lye right now making himself as wide as humanly possible. Car wide in the rear of the picture, that's Leo Delmar, the Frenchman, having a bit of a blustery start. Gareth McAllister making some ground as they come on through in towards Ravage Corner, and well, as quickly as we got underway, race and the battles are absolutely reaching their peak already. But as they roar the way on down through X, there's a spin, and that's Ryan Timu who's gone around that after that brilliant race number 1. Oh, goodness me, he's collected with a number of drivers by looks, including Chase Small, also David Ayezi, and also Gail Rose. Well, all 4 of those drivers may be out of this race. We'll have to wait and see, because there's no fast repairs available. It's a tow and repair, and that's going to take a very long time given the damage that these cars can pick up. But as we look from the instant at X corner, and indeed 4 drivers so far in dismal straights, and in fact dire straights, but I mean, I think Rose and Ayezi are still pushing on. In fact, so it's Sakis, Tivu, Small and Callaway who've all been involved in that altercation, now to tow to the pits as we correct ourselves. Want to see Richard Lye right now absolutely on a mission to try and break away, but Ray Aguilar here trying to make amends for what was a bit of a disappointing race number 1, albeit he was on the bottom step of the podium. P3's nothing to laugh at, and I think he should be smiling, but I think he wanted a lot more. But speaking of a lot more, if you wanted more overtaking action, here it is. Michael Fairchild goes side by side with Gritzko, and Antonio Bianchi tries to squeeze in the middle. He thinks about it, but then decides perhaps not going to lateral 2. Oh, major lock up there, and that's Gritzko who collects the car just in time. Well, Gritzko showing that you can get these cars to stop as an emergency, but doesn't really want to do that, because now he will have blistered the tyres quite significantly as a result of the heat patches where he was contacting with the surface and sliding along. That's the last thing you want to do, is under rotate a tyre on one of these machines. And as they power their way onto the Kemmel Straight, well, right now Gritzko's going to wait and try and let that tyre cool down, but it's 3 wide at the front of the field. In the middle is Lye. On the inside it was none other than Court. On the outside is Aguilar, and Aguilar takes the lead of this race. The Avanti Autosport driver absolutely wanting to take the lead away as quick as he possibly can. As they make their way down the hill into the Raj corner. Further back, Alex Penn here, also a bit of a 3-wide altercation as the privateer looks to go around the outside of Gritzko, and behind him that is Peterson, who thinks about playing as well, but decides not to make it 3-wide through Ravage, and recognises the fact that 3-wide there doesn't normally work out. And as they come on out of X corner, now in towards Pearl corner, where it's all going to be here now about who is going to be the most daring in this long train of cars. As we ride on board with the driver who's right at the back of this pack from P14 all the way to P7 of what is it, Shahid Zahair looking up the inside of McAllister. Can't quite find it as they make the way on towards what will be now Stablo 1, but as he tries to look for the move of McAllister, well, it's going to all be for the Canadian driver here just to play the patience game as we see a run wide, and that was from Peterson, who's now going to have Zainab looking up the inside, and well, Peterson goes very wide there, really tries but lose all the momentum. Zuhair will gain the place as well, as we can see Zainab going defensive on the inside there. I think trying to make it clear he wants that inside line. Zuhair's looking around the outside, it's going to be bold stuff. Oh, goodness me, that's a huge slap to the wall, and that is going to be in tears for Zainab. The car hits the wall after running wide initially, dirt on the tyres, and in the end I think just hitting that outside curb cover with Blanchard completely upset the balance of the car and has put his race into the barrier. And well, hopefully he's okay, not too shaken up by that incident. As meanwhile onto lap number 3 comes Cameron Dance up the inside there versus Antonio Bianchi, but these two exchanging places. Grits go into the pit lane for some damage on the car, we do believe, as Zainab has been towed to the pits off camera, so therefore it has been a very dramatic race, and we're not even a third of the way into it of these 20 laps, as now Dance having to try and hold off what is a charge of Bianchi, with Fairchild there as well, and well, Fairchild puts himself right in the middle of the two of them, and in the end says, don't mind if I do, and I think Bianchi says, yes, I do mind if you do, and as they head in towards the right-hander, starting off late on, well, Bianchi gets ahead, Fairchild squeezes through, and Cameron Dance is forced back to P6. I think the patience game here will pay off in the long term, in the fact that he may decide, you know what, it's not worth fighting too hard here, as otherwise I'm just going to hurt the tyres and I'm going to put myself at a risk of losing pace later on in the race. And we saw that for a number of drivers in the sprint, but they're taking too much life out of the tyre, and therefore they've really dropped off in the closing couple of laps. And given the fact they've got to do at least 5 laps before they can, well, they've got to do at least 4 laps, we should say, technically 5, because they can come in at the end of the 5th lap before they may come into the pits and change tyres. Well, therefore for our drivers it's all going to be about managing that tyre life, particularly if you want to go longer in the race and guarantee that you avoid coming out into potential traffic that's battling further down the running order, particularly if you're one of these drivers up front, such as our race leader of Aguilar, as the Avanti Autosport driver comes out of Stablo 2. As he powers his way onwards now towards Blanchimont, will keep his head down here, and the clouds continue to settle over the Belgian circuit, albeit no sign of rain today. It's going to be clear skies for the most part. We look back to Richard Lai, the Road Racing driver, who all started on pole, and it all went backwards from there so far, but he's now trying to make his way forwards, takes P6, then going around the outside of Dance. Some nice move there. Dance not been up too much of a fight, but I get the feeling that Cameron may be more thinking about the longer pitch here, as a new fastest lap of the race of 54.480 for Court in P2, so therefore Elliot Court is now starting to reel in the race leader, so everyone now settling into their race trend in terms of the type of pace they want to deploy and also what their strategy is going to be. And that's going to be a big question here, given the fact you do spend quite a lot of time in the pits of the circuit at Spa-Francorchamps, whether it is for a fuel stop, for a change of tyres, or just in general pass on through for a drive-through. It is one of the longer pit lanes, albeit we're only running the Grand Prix pit lane, we're not running the full classic pit lane, if you will, but still being one of the longer pit lanes on our championship calendar, it therefore means you want to ideally pick the right time to pit, and you want to try and get yourself out of traffic and avoid getting into traffic in doing your pit stop. And Mayorga doing exactly that at the moment, in terms of not being in too much traffic and just getting his head down and chasing after Turnbull. And James Turnbull being 4 seconds up the road, as we just heard him brawl past our cameraman, and here he is, the privateer in the 83 in the orange and blue machine. We're right now holding on to the bottom end of the top 10 and trying to chase down Shahid Zuhair, and doing so, albeit not quite at the pace you'd like, given that Zuhair is pulling away about 3/10 a lap so far, but it's still a lot of distance to go. And again, Turnbull could be saving a bit of his overtake button until later on, given the fact they do not refresh it in the pit lane. They only get 200 seconds over the entire race distance, so therefore our drivers will need to be tactical about it, because given the amount of time they spend holding that button down for the likes of the Kemmel Straight and also up towards Blanchimont, we'll find those 200 seconds very quickly do go away. And as Cameron Dance makes his way on through Stablo 2, there you can see once again deploying the button into it, deploying there for Penn behind, and Alex Penn looking to keep the chase on as they head onwards towards what will be turn number 17. As they make their way through the left-hander and now down towards the bus stop chicane. Well, that flashing light meaning that, of course, the energy is being deployed out, the overtake button is being deployed to its fullest, and the number 30 looking for the move, but doesn't get a chance to make the move, because Cameron Dance makes his way into the pit lane, so deciding to go for the undercut here, intriguingly, for Dance. Now, looking at our circuit map available in the top right corner of your screen, you'll notice the fact that there is quite a bit of space between the top 10 and then the second half of the field, particularly for P13 downwards, so that is McAllister and line downwards to there, it does mean that Dance may have an opportunity here to come out in some clear air, or even so, if 13th, 14th and 15th make their way past, he'll still have some space. We've got a couple of drives in, Jace Mayer in behind him as well, also Eric Guillory in, as we do see Dance leaving the pit lane. We hear an engine roaring past our camera, however, and who is that? Well, I believe it's McAllister, and will Dance in the end will just get out ahead of McAllister, so this has been a very close-knit pit stop, but Dance, you can see they're using the push to pass in order to try and assert his position, and he'll be hoping that Gareth behind him will now be thinking, you know what, I've just seen Dance come out the pit lane, I know he's on a different strategy, there's no point me fighting, and exactly that happens, and the Rabbit Racing driver just tucks in behind there, and Cameron Dance, well, this could be the strategy that works out in his favour and leaps him all the way back up into the podium positions, because right now he's got plenty of clear track ahead of him, and well, he's brought himself all that time on an early pit stop. But keep in mind, of course, he will now need to run the tyres he's running for what will be the best part of 15 laps, as we do look to Aguilar made his way and ran. In fact, hold up a second, that pit stop was made on the end of lap number 4, so that is not a valid pit stop, I do believe, because it would have needed to have been served on this lap at the earliest. So unless Dance had a problem, has decided to change the tyres, he will need to come in again and change tyres. Well, that's going to be a surprise, I do believe, unless we've got the regulations wrong in our notes here. But otherwise, Cameron Dance may be at risk of a penalty after this race. But meanwhile, looking to Antonio Bianchi, the Avanti Autosport driver. Well, he will make the move here, as meanwhile Adam Merchant is into the pit lane. And well, as he comes on in, Bianchi will be released into P3. And it'll be Richard Lyon and Michael Fairchild behind. Shahid Zahair and Alex Penn all staying out. And Penn still trying to make his way into what is P6 on the circuit. But we believe P7 in terms of strategy battle between himself and Zuhair, as they roar their way onwards towards what will be the old start finish straight, used of course in the 90s, and also used as what is the rolling start line for any race that does have a rolling start here around Spa-Francorchamps, whereas where Drive started is the modern standing start position for standing start races here in the Belgian circuit. But as we come from more technicalities of history, back to the here and now, more Penn still in the chase after Zuhair as they head in towards the right-left complex of Les Combes. As they do, you can see Zuhair just sliding a little wide, pushing the car to its utmost, and well, it looks absolutely fascinating on camera, it must be said, but his tyres will not be appreciative of what is the extra wear that the Kraken Racing driver is forcing through them at the moment, and that is going to come back to bite him later on in this stint. You can see the car just slightly becoming a bit twitchy on the rear end as he turns in. To be fair, I believe the drivers are allowed to adjust the brake biases that they're running on these machines, and Zuhair may fancy a little bit more of a looser rear end under braking in particular, whereby he'll have a rearward bias, and that opens up the rear of the car, makes it a lot less settled compared to a more forward bias, and Zuhair able to use that to give himself extra rotation and therefore just try to break away from Penn. But as they come into Stabilo 1 and Stabilo 2, they're heading towards the end of the first third of this race, and these two absolutely locked together in what is an absolutely brilliant cat and mouse chase as they make the way on towards the end of the lap. Meanwhile, we look back to your race leader of Ray Aguilar, as the Avanti Autosport driver still has Court behind him. Elliott Court there with him as they head on towards what will be lap number 7. And as we reach the first third of the race completed, the Avanti Autosport driver right now not really doing too much in terms of trying to break away. And I think he and Court have both reached this silent agreement, if you will, which is that, look, we're both going to gradually break away. This race is going to be between us unless Bianchi can find some magic. Of course, Aguilar, he would love for Antonio Bianchi to be with this battle, because then it would be an opportunity for Avanti Autosport to make it a 1-2 with Bianchi being Aguilar's teammate. But the problem will be that if he tries to backcourt into Bianchi this early on, then it runs the risk of bringing the likes of Lyon, Fairchild and Zuhair in. The more they battle, and the more risk they have of opening up this lead battle. So it really is right now, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and the blue passport motorsport driver's court is closing. But I suspect, unless he really has a high level of confidence that he can make a move and make it stick, he won't look to go for anything at this time, just because of the risk it would involve and how it could potentially force a battle between the drivers when they just want to make this a one-on-one right at the end of the race. And of course, Court being what was your winner for, well, not in fact your, excuse me, was your winner for race number 1, and he'll be hoping for plenty more in this second race. He'd love to make it back-to-back wins, but it's one thing to say he'll be able to do it, it's another thing to be able to make it happen in reality. But Court will be all too aware of it, will the Englishman. As he heads in towards turn number 14, cover for Stablo 1. We look back to Jace Mayer, who's chasing after Jerry Barber. These two have different strategies. Barber has yet to pit, Mayer has pitted, and well, I believe that pit stop being valid. So Mayer's going to look up the inside there, and well, Barber saw it going, left the door open, and Mayer really tucked it in. Not a conventional place to make a move into the third quarter of Lake On, but you can make it happen, and Mayer being allowed to run onwards there, the Rabbit Racing driver, and I think Barber just recognising the fact there are two entirely different race strategies here, and there's no point fighting. So it means the field has spread out to a degree, particularly with the open lap instance that we have seen, and well, 25 starters, and we do currently have only 16 runners, of which 15 on the lead lap. But as our drivers continue to push their way towards what is the halfway point of this race, well, we have lost, unfortunately, none other than firstly Christian Gritzko, and well, we lost him 3 laps in the lap we're currently on due to a separate incident, which some have to be towed to the pits on lap number 5. We also had the incident for Eric Guillory, which sees him currently parked in the pit lane, albeit 5 laps down. I don't think the car's going to be out there. We've also seen retirements for Xavier Zainab and Nick Peterson, and both drivers there in a major shunt have been forced to retire for the race. We also saw the retirement from David Ayezi, and well, that being 6 laps ago, and he was involved in an incident at X corner alongside Philippe Sarkis, also Ryan Thibault, Chris Small, and also I do believe Chase Small, I should say, not Chris Small, my goodness, and then Jaden Calloway. All those drivers being involved in that nasty incident at turn number 9 on the open lap, and all having to retire their cars for varying degrees of damage. And well, therefore, what we have left may be a reduced field, but right now we're going to make up for quantity with quality of the racing that's going to come, we can assure you, as we continue to push towards that halfway point of this race. So Shahi Sahir right now still being chased by Alex Penn. These two staying together. They are the closest battle on the circuit. And the thing with the strategy at this point is it now becomes a game of tactics. It really becomes a game of what is 3D chess, or 187 mile an hour chess, depending on the speeds that our drivers are reaching. In the fact that our drivers are going to be thinking, okay, I need to manage my tyres. I also need to be wary of the fact that I've got to change tyres in the pit lane. But if I'm going to go long on my opening stint, keep in mind that our drivers could go all the way to what is the penultimate lap of the race before they need to pit, so long as they don't pit before the conclusion of what is lap number 4. So on the 5th lap and onwards, they are allowed to pit. But what it does mean is if you're planning to go long, you've got to get those tyres to go the distance, and they will naturally fall off over the course of a given stint, but then you'll have fresher tyres towards the end of the race to go attacking. But to combine with that, you also need to think about your push to pass button. With the 200 seconds you don't get any replenishment in the pit, or by simply braking, you don't recharge it through electrical energy saving, or the conversion of what is braking or thermal energy into electrical energy over the course of the race. You need to be the one who masters that button, and indeed make sure you've got plenty of overtake button available towards the end of the race, whether it's to defend or go on the offensive. So therefore your strategy is going to revolve not just around when you choose to pit, and also what is your tyre management, but also it's going to revolve around how much overtake button can you keep to yourself until you go towards the end of the race, because that may be where you need it most. And then finally adds that fuel. The drivers have started each race on 50% fuel. Could we see a need to put some fuel into the car? And if so, does that dictate when our drivers need to come into the pits? And will some fuel saving just give them the opportunity to do one extra lap and make them feel safe enough to be able to extend and go for the ultimate overcut, or what we just used to call going long in the older days with regards to strategy? Well, all those questions will be in the minds of our drivers. And off camera, we have had an incident for Gareth McAllister, and well, he's had to be towed to the pits as a result. And it means with 16 runners, we are now down to 15, which is unfortunate. As we looked at Tony Bianchi here, has got Richard Lai trying to close the delta. It's oscillating between 8 tenths and a second at the moment, but Bianchi pushing as much as he can. But notice there the body language of Bianchi's car, really trying to force the car out of the corner, trying to bury the throttle in and carry as much speed as possible. And that's why the rear end is so twitchy out of these low and medium speed corners, because he's absolutely hounding the car around. Meanwhile, Lai by comparison, not as fast, but what he's doing is taking a much more sensitive approach and making sure the car stays as stable as possible. And the Rodent Racing driver, I think, might be showing signs that he's planning to go long as he makes his way out of what is the last 2 quarters and on to the halfway point of this race. We go on to lap number 10, but Richard Lai definitely showing signs here that he might be planning to go the distance compared to his roles. As meanwhile, a change of position here for P9, and a Merchant has already made his pit stop for today. Jumps ahead of Arturo Mayorga in towards Blanchimont corner, and the BMR driver, who's yet to pit, decides it's not worth fighting given the fact he would only scupper his race, as he decides in turn to come into the pits there, taking a bit of what is a note from Merchant's race and deciding, you know what, I've gone far enough on this current set of tyres. But he heads on down the pit lane now, and indeed he'll peel into his pit box shortly, and we'll all be about nailing it and making sure not to go too far forward or too far back, so that way he gets the most efficient pit stop for his pit crew. We come back to your race leader, Ray Aguilar, and well, as he heads on down the Rivage corner, the gap between himself and Cord now up to 1.5 seconds. It has opened up little by little. Both drivers right now setting personal bests out there. The fastest driver out of the circuit is Adam Merchant, who has recently set what was the fastest lap of the race and is continuing to absolutely attack his Merchant. So therefore, you would imagine that Merchant is going to factor into this race later on. We've also got Jason Mayer in the pit lane as I look out in my commentary booth window. So Mayer decided to make his pit stop now, but Aguilar and Cord both decide to go longer and longer. As he comes out of Stavlo too. One of the things that Aguilar is the fact that he has opened up a little bit of a gap versus Cord, and that is going to be in his favour. But ideally, you want a gap of about 3 to 4 seconds if you can, just to give yourself a bit more breathing room, particularly if you have a slow pit stop in terms of getting to your box, or you're slow on entry to that pit limiter line. Obviously, our drivers want to be as aggressive as possible into the pit lane, and that way minimise the amount of time they spend at the lower speed. But there's always the risk versus reward, which is if you rush to get onto the pit limiter line, you may have to slam on the brakes, and therefore you may end up missing the pit limiter line and award yourself a drive-through penalty that you'll have to serve within 3 laps as soon as you pick it up. And that's the last thing you want to do, as Aguilar and Cord both set new personal best of what we can see there of 54s, both of them on 54.1s, and well, as a result now they're both absolutely match each other pace, and Cord just staying in the wings and making sure not to let Aguilar get that gap up above 2 seconds. And I think he's worried if it does get to 2 seconds that Aguilar may be able to start to break away as the race goes deeper and deeper. But Richard Lyon still chasing after Bianchi, and Bianchi's pace not quite that of the leaders, half a second slower that last time, in fact almost 6/10 slower compared to Gordon Aguilar, and Lyon by comparison was 1.5 tenths faster compared to Bianchi, so Bianchi might be starting to hit a little bit of a cliff here in regards to tyre life, and this is where Richard Lyon's approach to conserving the tyres and running the car in a much more gentle manner might be now starting to be rewarded as he makes his way through turns 8 and 9, albeit Bianchi will have something to say about it, no doubt, if he can, but Lyon seemingly inching closer. Behind that is Michael Fairchild. He's got Shahid Zuhair and Alex Penn, who are both closing, and in fact, on the last lap, 4 tenths were gained by Zuhair on Fairchild, so a battle for P5 out on circuit could be starting to swing this way. And well, Zuhair and Penn, they've opened up a bit of a gap between each other respectively, but they are both moving at a rate of knots, which shows signs of reaching Fairchild within the next 2 to 3 laps. They'll be within 1 second. And these cars do pick up the toe from each other about 1.5 seconds away, but they really start to notice that dirty air and that slipstream effect on the straights from 1 second and closing. So therefore, Zuhair and Penn will be starting to need to react to the fact they're going to be picking up additional dirty air over the front end of the car, and that will just change the way the car handles and the body language they have to employ in order to get the car to be compliant. Slightly turning in earlier, braking slightly earlier as well, because they'll be carrying an overspeed compared to their normal speed into the braking zones. But meanwhile, none of that will matter for this man, Richard Lyon, who makes his way into the pit lane, and as our leader's gone to lap number 12, lap 11 is where he puts his stake in the ground and decides to move on to the fresh set of tyres and go to the end. As behind him, Michael Fairchild is also in. James Turnbull carries on, and as Turnbull makes his way on through. Turnbull has really been a revelation in this race in terms of keeping his head down and not making any mistakes compared to race number 1, where it all unfolded in such dramatic fashion so early on. But can Turnbull bring it home? That will be what's on his mind as he heads on the run through Uruge and Blanchimont, well, not Uruge and Blanchimont, Uruge and Radion, we should say, as he comes through the left, right, and left, and down onto the right and kink for the Kimmel Straight. But right now, Turnbull in a bit of a lonely race, but he's really racing with the likes of what is Leo Delmar, also Gail Rose and Jeremy Barber, and he'll be hoping that he doesn't fall into their clutches, and by running the strategy that he's had, he's just been able to get ahead of them in terms of overall race time. But looking back to Fairchild and Lyon, as that is Richard Lyon swinging from left to right behind, and that, you may be thinking, is he checking out a problem in the car? That is to try and get a lot of tyre temperature in as soon as possible. So Lyon right now wants to go racing. He's been saving up all of his racing for the second stint, and here he goes then. But Fairchild in front of him, and in fact, Lyon has lost out versus Fairchild, and that has been for a 2-second delta in the pit lane. So Michael Fairchild has jumped ahead of Richard Lyon. Cameron Dance is just ahead of him as well, and what an upset. And Adam Merchant is ahead of all 3 of them. So Merchant going for that very early pit stop. He's made that count, albeit as Lyon makes his way on through the double left-hander there, put on corner. Down they come then, in towards on the advantage chicane. Lai really the biggest loser of the group, but the flip side of the coin being that he might just feel a bit more confident now to go attacking the second half of the race, particularly the way he does seem to be a bit of a tyre whisperer. We'll have to see exactly how that plays out in fashion. You see Fairchild there run a bit wide out of Stablo 1, through Stablo 2 they go, and more pit stops are coming. As we can see, Shahi Zahair now hits the pit limiter line. The Kraken Racing driver creeps along pit lane, and as he does so, releases Alex Penn and Antonio Bianchi to carry on their merry way. So all these pit stops are gradually now starting to form a fashion, and the pit stop will be calling more and more for our drivers as they creep towards the end of this race. As James Turnbull there gets a bit of a power slide on coming out of La Source, and we're very eager with the throttle pedal, but not too eager to hit the wall, thankfully. Zahair leaves the pit lane, and we look to the blimp camera as he does so. Behind him, that is going to be none other than Jeremy Barber, who is a lap down, and he's been in the pits for some time. But Zahair comes out immediately behind Fairchild, but leaps ahead of Richard Lai. So Lai's race is completely unfolding in the wrong direction. Zahair has made up the place, and he's on the back of Fairchild. So Zahair's pit stop, in fact, being an absolutely brilliant one. And I think some fuel saving's gone in here, because we have seen a mixture of pit stop times. 7 seconds for some drives, meanwhile 11 for others. Zahair looking around the outside there of Fairchild, and it's a smooth move, but can he get it stopped in time? The answer is no. Fairchild goes to the switchback and gets exactly that, but runs wide onto the gravel, and that's going to cost him time now. Zahair's back on the inside. You can see Lai behind trying to pick the right horse to back as they come down for Rivage corner. He's going to back Zahair here, but he's going to put himself on the outside for X, as it's going to be Fairchild. A bit of contact between the two of them, and Zahair biffed wide. He won't be too pleased about that as they head down into the braking zone for Puon, with more of the lift off and shift zone. But as they come down, Zahair, who almost had the move done, in the end a rubber tyres between himself and Fairchild, and it's meant that Rich Lai's now to get ahead. But I don't think it's over yet for the Kraken Racing driver, as we do see Lai go very deep there, and Richard Lai struggling to tame his machine. The number 43 driver here, where stint 1 seemed to be all in control, right now it's almost all out of control as he runs a bit wide out of Stablo 1, and I think the dirty air plus some frustration with the fact the pit stop has not worked out for him means that Richard Lai's race now really is up against the clock. As they head up towards Blanchimont corner, our top 5 out there who've yet to pit, all still running, and this fighting could in turn result in some other places being swapped as a result of strategy. But the leading driver who has taken their pit stop is Adam Merchant, as we can see here, the Squid Gang Racing driver carrying on as he pushes around through La Source. Onto lap 14 he goes, and he is P6 currently. His next target is James Turnbull, who is 7 seconds up the road, and he'll be confident he's going to lead ahead of Turnbull, given the fact that Turnbull has yet to pit. Meanwhile, hold the fault there, as that almost hitting the wall on the inside of turn 1 on the exit. That's Richard Lai, who's had a spin around, and Zahair moves up into P9 as a result, and he's going to break away, but it's going to be a huge error from Lai. And I think Zahair also involved in a little bit of a moment, because they both lost Fairchild by the best part of 4 seconds. We didn't quite catch what happened. We caught the consequences, and the consequences now are the fact that it'll be Michael Fairchild who's going to run away in P8 with everything all said and done, unless Zahair or Lai can find some magical pace here in the closing stage of this race, because we are into the final third come the end of this lap. And whilst it's all going on in the bottom half of the top 10 and the very front of the field, Ray Aguilar and Elliot Court are still running 1.2 seconds between the two of them, P1 and P2 respectively. Neither driver right now seemingly to make a mistake, neither one wanting to give ground, but the one thing they've got to keep in mind is the longer they go on, the greater the risk they have at Adam Merchant catching up. And Elliot Court immediately, I think, responding to the fact they're lapping consistently in the 54 zeros. Meanwhile, we can tell you that Adam Merchant has been lapping consistently in the 53 fours through to 53 sixes on a car that is going to only be getting lighter, with tyres that are gradually going to wear away. But right now, Adam Merchant really has been flying out there, and he's made his way through Blanchimont as Court comes into his pit box. This is going to be very close between Court and Merchant potentially. Merchant right now is heading on through the bus stop chicane. There he is on your camera. Court is leaving his pit box. I look at my Conte booth window, and we look to the blimp camera, and Court makes way out the pit lane. That's Turnbull. Well, in fact, it's not as close as we thought it would be. Turnbull in the end behind Merchant, behind what is is their Court, but Adam Merchant sets the fastest lap of the race, a 53.39 to the nearest hundredth, and Adam Merchant right now, well, he's closed the gap to Court to only 5 seconds, so Adam Merchant absolutely attacking. But as he makes his way on towards the Kemmel Straight, the problem now for Merchant is, has he got enough life left in the car? Has he got enough push to pass to go chasing after Court, who, keeping in mind, Court and Aguilar seem to reach a little bit of a truce between the two, which is let's just run our race together because our battle is between us at the end of this race. And I think both of them knew that Merchant had come into the pits early and it decided there's no point fighting because otherwise Merchant is going to jump us both. But can Adam Merchant seal the deal here? We know he's one of the fastest drivers over a single lap at this circuit, the Spa-Francorchamps, given the fact in qualifying he put it P2 and just missed out on pole to his teammate Jaden Callaway. Merchant has been putting in 53s where everybody else has been putting in 54s, although I say that on the previous lap, Ray Aguilar a 53.93, but the point being that Merchant has been the most consistent in the mid to low 53s compared to his rolls in and out of the toe. So Merchant has been hammering those lap times in. Indeed, I think channeling a little bit of his inner Max Verstappen with regards to fastest lap after fastest lap. But as the number 41 driver makes his way out of Stablo 2, just how long can he keep this up before something is going to give, whether it's him as a driver or the car says, I can't do it anymore. And that'll be the tyres giving way when Antonio Bianchi sets the personal best of 53.621. So Bianchi showing that whilst the car's been sliding out left, right and centre, he's proving the doubters wrong, and indeed proving us here in the commentary wrong that he's got a lot of pace in this car still. And well, he could be on course for a top 5 as a minimum here as Alex Penn is into the pit lane. James Turnbull also in, and Penn and Turnbull both with brilliant opening stints between the two of them. We'll both going up into the jacks there. The cars will have their tyres changed, and well, as he gets himself set and ready to go, it's a quick stop, just literally the tyres, and that's it for Penn. And meanwhile for Turnbull, I think some fuel may have gone into the car as well, because we did see it come down off the jacks and was stationary, and that will be the difference as Richard Lai comes on through on the start-finish straight. And well, where will he come back out? Well, he comes out P9 to what is Penn, who is in P6. So Alex Penn, well, the priority in the number 30, this goes to show you the overcut sometimes works magic. He's come out ahead of Michael Fairchild, albeit Michael Fairchild's going to say, well, you may be ahead of me right now, but that's not going to stay for long, because here comes Fairchild, looks on the right of your picture, and Penn's going to be on the inside here. Penn immediately backs out there and tucks in behind Fairchild. I think Penn knows what he's done here strategy-wise. He's jumped himself into the middle of the top 10, and he doesn't want to throw that away by battling too hard. As soon as he's come out of the pits, he's got to get those tyres up to temperature, and now the question will be on the other foot. Can Michael Fairchild break away in that P6 position, or will Penn come back at him? And that is what we're going to be waiting to see, because Lai versus Zuhair, they are trying to close up to that battle for P6. They're only 3 seconds behind it, but the problem is it's not that easy to close up here, particularly as we're getting towards those late stages. And what tools have they still got left at disposal? What tyre life have they got left in order to make an overtake possible? Well, we'll have to wait and see. We've still it's 13 runners in this race. We have recently lost Jace Mayer and also Jeremy Barber. They're both in the pit lane with both cars looking to be retired. So 13 runners. Gail Rolls is our last driver out there at the moment. The Rodent Racing driver isn't giving in as the race leader looks to put a lap on him very shortly. As we look from the leader and the driver at the very back of the field to the middle field, here is Zuhair and Lai still running together. And they've been the focus of our attention as the new fastest lap of the race. Lap number 16, Adam Merchant, a 53.140. So Adam Merchant showing there's still plenty of pace in the car. And the response from Court and company is a 53.8 for Court. For Bianchi, a 53.6. For Aguilar, a 53.91. But keep in mind, the top two have yet to pit. Court has pitted, and he is still 7/10 of a second a lap slower by comparison to Merchant that time around. So therefore, when we do look to this battle, and there's the hunt for P3, and there you can see in the rear picture, that is Merchant who's closing little by little. Well, the gap, when Court left the pit lane, was 5 seconds. The gap has already been slashed to 3.3. But is there enough time? Based on this rate of knots, if we do some quick mathematics, there's not enough time, because we are currently 4 laps from the finish, and well, Merchant needs to close at least what is 8/10 of a second a lap rather than 7/10 if he wants to be in an attacking position right at the end on the final lap. But Court right now doing just enough to stay safe, he'll feel, albeit it could be different when Merchant gets within the toe, particularly if he is able to conquer the dirty air and therefore use it to his advantage to gain a bit more lap time. But it's going to be a big question that can only be answered when Merchant gets there. But the point is right now, Merchant is stripping the time out of the P3 man, the man who's batting for the win of this race. And Ray Aguilar, meanwhile, stays out again. What about his teammate for Avanti Autosport, Antonio Bianchi? As Aguilar sets the fastest lap of the race. I think there might have been a bit of slipstream involved in that from Rolls, but that's a 52.816. So Aguilar will use that as a bit of a buffer to Court, and he'll feel confident now if he can put in a lap like that, that just keeps him alive. And also there'll be one extra point for the fastest lap in each race. A change to the regulations this season from season 11 where it was 2 bonus points. Now it's only 1, but Aguilar setting the fastest lap there. A staggering lap of a 52.812. And well, what else is to come there? We'll have to find out as Court. A 53.626 in P3, Merchant a 53.202. It's not enough from Merchant. Bianchi still staying out there, but the lap time's not coming his way. So if we do our prediction, we believe that Bianchi will come out the pit lane right in between Court and Merchant as it currently stands. But how close he'll be between the two drivers, that's the question we can't answer. Our prediction would be he's going to be right on top of Merchant, but not really Court at this point. So therefore a 1-2 for Avanti Autosport may not be possible, but they are going to be looking for a double podium here, depending on how the Court Merchant battle evolves. Further down the order, Lai still closing here on Zuhair. In fact, he's close enough now to think about a move. He's going to look around the outside as they power their way down the Kemmel Straight. Lie on the right of your picture, it's going to be Zuhair on the left. And who's going to give way here, if anyone is? And Lai in the end goes later on the brakes, all the way around the outside. And Richard Lai making that move count. And Zuhair just not quite able to outbrake his rival on that tyre to inside line. But he's not going to give up here. But Richard Lai takes P8 back, and he'll feel a little bit happier now he's done that. But I think there's going to be a lot of frustration from the American, knowing this race has not gone the way he's wanted it. It's gone backwards on strategy, not forwards, after what looked to be a superb first stint, but a pit stop that's come back to haunt him. Meanwhile, Michael Fairchild still holding on to P6 now versus Alex Penn, as Penn starts to turn the screw and put the pressure on. But meanwhile, this is a high pressure pit stop for Ray Aguilar as he comes on down pit lane, and Ferranti Autosport, both their drivers are in with the penultimate lap due to get underway by the time they come out the pit lane. Elliott Court, meanwhile, here he is coming down towards the bus stop chicane. Where are they all going to fit together? That is the question now as we look to the blimp camera view. Court makes his way out of the final quarter, comes to the timeline. Aguilar's been serviced. He is leaving the pit lane now. You'll see his car appear there. Where is Court? He's not in picture. What about Bianchi? Well, Bianchi in the end comes out P4, because you can see that is Merchant. Merchant makes his way through the source. Bianchi's going to be right behind him. So in the end, Bianchi not having enough in the tank to be able to stay one step ahead of Court or Merchant, and now 1.1 seconds behind Antonio Bianchi if he wants to be on the podium. To make it a double podium for Avanti Autosport, he's going to have to get the move done versus Adam Merchant on circuit. But given the pace that Adam Merchant has been showing ever since he's had his pit stop, I get the feeling that unless Bianchi has got a huge ace up his sleeve, he has just changed tyres, and perhaps he has enough now in terms of his confidence and a bit of an overtake butted as well to go, you know what, these tyres have only got to do 2 laps. I'll get them warmed up on this one and I'll go all in on the final lap. It may not happen, but meanwhile, what we can see is there's Cameron Dance, and here is Alex Penn and Michael Fairchild, and that is a swap for position. Alex Penn up into P6 down the Kemmel Straight and gets ahead of Fairchild. And well, we said about Penn was closing ever since his pit stop, and well, Penn has found his way back ahead, and that is looking to be a sizable gap already on Fairchild. I think Fairchild's perhaps run out of tyre life, because the gap's up to 7.5 tenths, and well, that is a very quickly gained gap, but we'll have to wait and see what it looks like come the bus stop chicane. That will be the true tell, as behind you see Light and Zuhair only 2 seconds back and watching this battle in anticipation from a distance in case they can be able to fight for P6. But as the drivers head in towards the Fanders chicane, well, we haven't got long before the checker flag gets ready to wave. We've got this lap plus one more, and well, the key battles right now, there is battling at the bottom end of the top 10, and there's potential battling at the front end of the top 10, but it's all going to be now about who gets it right. Does anybody put a foot wrong? Has everybody got enough tyre life and fuel to get to the end? Well, the white flag waves, and Ray Aguilar goes on to one more lap with a gap of 1.8 seconds over Elliott Court. He has opened the gap up since the pit stop, but Adam Merchant Merchant sets a new fastest lap, a 52.546. It's an absolutely staggering lap from Adam Merchant, and it's going to give him the fastest lap point, surely, unless somebody else can pull a trick out the sleeve. But right now, the Squid Gang Racing driver is absolutely hustling here. He doesn't want to finish third. He doesn't want to finish second. He wants to win, but he's got to know that right now, unless it's a miracle, and Lady Luck says that Courtney's going to have an error upon some description, he's not going to be able to do it on circuit. And as they power their way in towards Lake On, down the Kemmel Straight, Merchant will be keeping his head down as low as possible in the car, hoping that's going to reduce the aerodynamic drag that his helmet produces, albeit it doesn't, given the way the cars are designed around the driver. But meanwhile, we've got Lai versus Zuhair, and Lai right now going defensive for P8 versus Zuhair, who's going to try and attack him around the outside. Coming down towards Lake On, they go. Zuhair getting side by side here. Equal speed between the turban. Both drivers give each other just enough space. You absolutely love to see it. And Lai there tries to put the squeeze on. The squeeze is too much, and the two of them come together, and it ends in tears there. And oh, goodness me. Well, I think both drivers will be absolutely fuming at each other with regards to that one. Zuhair and Lai going to carry on as bodywork falls off the car left, right, and centre. But I think that one's going to go to the steward's room afterwards, and I wouldn't be surprised if they both get a shout at too, because what could have been brilliant racing in the end has turned to tears. But as they bring it back together, and I think neither driver wants to give in right now as they continue to fight each other. And well, Zuhair, they're going defensive into Puron corner and making Line look all the way around the outside. As they come down for the double left, and Turnbull is right on the back of this battle. Well, can he become a factor in it as well? Well, meanwhile, we have to look at the front of the field, ladies and gentlemen, as he comes down to the braking zone. Court is closing. He's closed up hand over fist, but it's not going to be enough because the checker flag waves, and Ray Aguilar for Avanti Autosport takes the win in the feature race in Belgium ahead of Elliott Court P2 and Adam Merchant. He huffed and puffed, but P3 was the best he could get for Squid Gang Racing today in this race ahead of Antonio Bianchi P4. Cameron Dance on the final lap sets the fastest lap of 52.37 to steal away the fastest lap point from Adam Merchant. Alex Penn will hold on to P6 ahead of Michael Fairchild at the line, and then it will be James Turnbull who's found his way past Richard Line, Shahi Zuhair in their battle, and well, it'll be James Turnbull who finishes P8, and that goes to show you sometimes it's not about how you start the day, it's about how you finish. And James Turnbull will be absolutely grinning from ear to ear like the Cheshire Cat with that one. Richard Line will take P9, but I think there's been a further altercation between himself and Zuhair on the final lap of this race. Lai takes P9 and Zuhair crawls to the finish line here, P10, just ahead of what will be Leo Delmar for the Rody Junior team. The Frenchman, P11, a bit of an anonymous race for the number 21 driver, but still 5 more rounds of the season to go. This is just the season opener, and then we will have Arturo Mayorga coming on through for BMR to finish P12 very shortly. As he heads towards the line, the checker flag continues to wave there, and as he does so for Mayorga, it's not been the greatest start to the season, but then again, sometimes you have to lay the foundations and build upon them, as Gail Rolls will feel the same, albeit he'll be happy about the fact he'll be taking P13, some good points on the board, and he'll know today it was all about survival, and that's exactly what the Rodent Racing driver in the number 5 did, as he's our final finisher on the lead lap. 13 finishers, all of them on the lead lap, ladies and gentlemen, and what a race to wrap up proceedings here at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. As we take a look to the scenic view, let's take you through those race results subject to any steward's inquiries, and here they are. And as we can see, for our feature race in round 1 of the League Zero Inca Salsa Formula Series Season 12, as brought to you on iRacing here today at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium, Ray Aguilar taking victory for Avanti Autosport by 6 attempts at the finish line over Blue Passport Motorsports Elliott Court. Courtney not quite able to make it back-to-back victories, but he'll be pleased with P1 and a P2 and know that he's got his championship campaign off to a near-perfect flying start. Adam Merchant, P3 there for Squid Gang Racing in a challenging day today, but still for Merchant, it's going to be positives that can be taken, which is absolutely flying on what was a shorter opening stint and an incredibly long second stint, but putting in fastest lap after fastest lap, albeit losing out in the end to Cameron Dance. But between Merchant and Dance, Antonio Bianchi, P4 there for Avanti Autosport, the Italian driver, 7.5 seconds off of the race winner, and then today it couldn't quite be a double podium for Avanti Autosport, but the strategy was worth the gamble and it paid off for a top 5. Cameron Dance, P5 there, took the fastest lap as well, the privateer, and will be hoping to make it onto the podium next time round. With Alex Penn fighting hard for a P6, the privateer ahead of fellow privateer Michael Fairchild in their great nip and tuck battle to the checker flag. James Turnbull showing that sometimes you just got to be in the right place at the right time to pick up the places, and doing exactly that to take P8 after a difficult race number 1. And then Arturo Mayorga and Richard Lai completed your top 10 there for BMR and Rodent Racing respectively, with post-round penalties being applied there for both drivers, I suspect for instant points and going over the automated limit, and therefore not able to serve on the final lap drive-through penalties. But Richard Lai being demoted to P10 for Rodent Racing, and Kraken Racing, Shahi Zahir, best of the rest, P11. But I suspect both drivers will be frustrated and called before the stewards after their altercation. Gail Rolls at P12 there for Rodent Racing, and your last finisher has classified a lap down, Leo Delmar for Rodent Jr., and well, P13. So 13 finishes in this race, and 12 is classified on the lead lap. We did unfortunately have retirements for Jeremy Barber, also for Jace Mayer, Gareth McAllister, Christian Gritzko, Nick Peterson, and continuing our way on down the order there, Eric Guillory, also Xavier Zainav, David Ayezi, Jalen Callaway, Chase Small, Ryan Tibu, and Philippe Sarkis. 25 starters, ladies and gentlemen, 13 finishers, 12 of whom on the lead lap. Well, goodness me, makes me breathless to think that was just the first round of the championship, ladies and gentlemen. We've still got 5 more rounds to go. But, of course, those rounds are in the future. And with all the racing coming to a close here in Belgium, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show, and perhaps you're sat there right now wanting to know more about League Zero in terms of what it's all about, or being on the grid for a future season, or even the current season, for all that and more, we definitely recommend firstly you check out the official League Zero website, and that's at www.leaguezero.net, where you can find out all the information, all the rules and regulations, and all the championship standings. Of course, we'll bring you updated on the standings going into round number 2 in a week's time. Alternatively, if you want to get to the beating heart of League Zero, well, you can always go to the official Discord, invite link available on screen there, where you can ask any questions you have and get to know the drivers and past participants even more. We'd also like to take a moment to say a big thank you to our sponsors, without whom things would not be possible, including Critical Video, MSR Performance Engineering, Team Goon Squad, and also our title sponsor for this season, and we're very grateful for our continued partnership with none and only what is Inca Salsa, as part of the Inca Salsa Formula Series put on by League Zero. And if you are a fan of salsa and are looking to taste the very best, then look no further than Inca Salsa. Containing only the freshest ingredients, no gluten and no added sugar, just like the finest authentic salsa should. Once you've had a taste of the incredible family salsa recipe from Julio Espino, you will never want to taste any of the rest. To put yourself in pole position to enjoy the best salsa you ever have, head to Inca Salsa's official website, and that is incasalsa.com today for further information. Once again, that website, incasalsa.com, because do remember, you won't taste the rest of the competition once you've had a bite of Inca Salsa. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, attention now turns to round number 2. In a week's time, we head to Italy for the one and only Italian temple of speed that is the Monza Grand Prix circuit. And after an absolutely eventful round of race at the circuit of Spa-Francorchamps, it's all going to be about high speed and low drag in Monza, but who will prove themselves to be the master of the need for speed. All the racing will occur on what will be Thursday the 14th of November 2024, but join us next weekend on Saturday the 16th of November as if it were live to see how all the racing action continues in Italy. Until then, we have been League Zero. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Brit and a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.